was kind of worried because there's like a big nest right next to the bird feeder I set up, and I didn't notice till after I set it up. So I think I might be luring these cute little birdies to their nests.
Oh
There's just like a hawk nest right
Oh
by
my
it.
gosh, that's awful.
I shouldn't be laughing, but
That is
hey,
awful.
that's nature. That's the circle
You
of
know
life.
what? Yeah, you're promoting the circle of life, dude. That's amazing. Any Cardinals?
Not in Utah, man. No
There are none in
Cardinals.
Utah. Is that true?
Yeah, there's none.
Really?
Yeah,
Because I saw them, I mean, weekly growing up.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a East Coast thing. Well, not even
Yeah.
East Coast, just like Mississippi River's kind of that dividing line.
yeah, the birds don't. It's like a cultural
it's too
thing.
far. They can't fly. They can't fly
Like, hey,
over the
buddy,
river.
we don't go past that river.
It's too dry. I'll
Oh,
die. It's
man.
the desert.
Well, speaking of Cardinals, should we jump into it?
We should jump into it.
Let's jump into it. All right, welcome everyone to a recap of Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It by Chris Voss. We've just finished it. When did we start it again? What do you remember the day?
We started it like the beginning of the month, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost exactly a month, I think, that we were reading this book.
Yeah, it's been great. And so today, since we're finishing it, we're just going to be giving it a rating, talking about our thoughts, and at the end, we're going to announce the next book. So stay tuned for that.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be super, super sweet. So let's get started right with the score, the Cardinal scorner. we're back.
We still haven't figured out if we're going to do scorner or scorer, but you know,
Scorer or just the Cardinal score.
the Cardinal score. Yeah, that's probably it works best. Oh man.
Well, we chatted about it and we loved this book. We both thought that it was like really engaging. It's a good read, even if you don't think it will be. Like I was talking to my mom and she was like, yeah, I started reading that book and it's not the kind of book that I would normally read, but it's really interesting and really engaging. And but the first thing on our list is the reading level, and it's pretty easy to read. Nothing too complicated. He gets into the nuances of negotiation and conversation, but you know, people talk to people every day. It's not anything that's going to be extremely mind-blowing. It's just going to be some new perspectives and, you know, some new insights on how to talk in a way that helps you get what you want and actually make both parties happy, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah, real quick on that. I think it literally anyone could read it. Kids could read it and understand it, to be honest. Like if they're, you know, middle school, high school, like it's really simple. In fact, I probably would recommend this to high schoolers just because
totally.
it's a really strong life skill, and that's a prime time to learn it. I wish I'd known this in high school.
100%.
There's the occasional like little swear word here and there, but it's still a really strong book and it's really easy to read. So,
But beware, if you teach this stuff to your kids, they may just become really good at negotiating. You won't be able to like,
oh crap,
you know, just trick them, convince them of what you want so easily.
They're gonna start mirroring you.
Yeah.
Hey, son, can you go to bed? To bed?
Go to bed. Go to bed.
Yeah, son, I want you to get on your pajamas and go to sleep. To sleep?
Go on my pajamas.
Oh gosh.
You never know what happened after that. Next thing you know, they'll own your house and your car, and they'll be the parents.
They'll be giving you allowance. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but on that, you know, it's very relevant. So we did we say the score for the reading level? I don't think I did. We're giving it a 2, 5 being extremely difficult to read. So 2 is actually a good score, even though it's low. Relevancy. How relevant is this, and how useful to just an everyday person? We're thinking it's a 4. And we talked briefly about how many people probably don't think they need this. You might think that I don't negotiate all that often. I'm not a salesperson. You know, I only sell a house every 20 years or something like that, right? Why would I really need to negotiate? But one of the things that I learned from this book is you negotiate a lot more than you think you do. And it's a really cool skill. I definitely haven't mastered it yet, but even just a little bit that I've been practicing, it's really cool. It really feels cool to be able to talk to people and in a way that helps you reach an agreement that's, you know, what you're wanting, basically.
Absolutely. It was so funny. I had dinner with a mutual friend of ours, actually, and I was telling him about the book club. He was kind and he was asking me about it, and said he read Why We Sleep and loved it. And
Yeah.
he's like, I've been really trying to get better sleep, and it's helped me a ton, these tips. And he's like, but I don't really care for negotiation. I'm not a negotiator. I'm not in sales or anything. So I decided to pass on this one. And I found that like kind of interesting. So I just kept the conversation going and started using some of the tips to like get him to talk more. Come to find out, he had an interview for a job like the next week that was huge, like could change the course of his career type interview. And he had to perform for it. And I was like, dude, what do you mean you don't negotiate? This is a prime example. So it just was funny. It didn't, and I was the same way. It didn't kind of register with me until I read the book that we're doing this stuff more than we realize every day.
Yeah, totally. Along with that, it was very readable. Just the book as a whole, very readable. Chris Voss, he tells some crazy stories. He takes the extreme when it comes to negotiation because he has that real life experience of being a hostage negotiator. And so I think that was the thing that kept me going with the book. Like every chapter starts with a story. Sometimes he ties back into past, stories and chapters that he had. And it gives you a really unique perspective, especially knowing that these are all true, like the highest stakes when it comes to negotiation. And so you almost don't feel like you're learning something, right? It feels like you're just observing an expert in his craft and getting a little bit of, knowledge by osmosis almost. Like you're kind of sitting behind him in the FBI van calling these people.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was really cool to hear those stories and got me hooked, to be honest. I mean, it was really fascinating. And gave him a lot of credibility because, dang, I mean, if there's anyone who's been negotiating, it's Chris Voss. It's Mr. Voss.
Mr. Voss. He killed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it was good vibes. So vibe check as well as readability is a 5 for both of us. Just a super enjoyable read. It's definitely one that I will come back to. Like, I guarantee it.
Absolutely.
I didn't learn it all in one go, so I'm coming back to it next time I have to negotiate anything.
Yeah.
Especially that little cheat sheet in the back. Like, that's super, super valuable.
So real quick,
yeah,
I actually listened to this book. So for Why We Sleep, I read it paperback, but I experimented and I listened to it on Audible. So tell me about this cheat sheet in the back.
Yeah, it's something that I think he gives to his students and people that he works with, right? I guess it's less of a cheat sheet and more of like a planning sheet. It's like, okay, before you go into a negotiation, identify these things. I think it talks about, some, like, literally write down some phrases that you hope to use. What do you expect them to say? But don't get too into the nitty gritty. Like, don't script out the whole thing because it's not going to work. Yeah. But he's like, all right, here's some mirroring things. Here's some labels that you can create for the situation that will come up at one point or another. And then it helps you just get kind of like a mental map of how you can handle that conversation when it comes up. So that's pretty much all it was. I think that's cool. Like on his website or something like that. So I'm sure it's out there. It's a free resource. But I thought that was very, very cool of him to provide that. As kind of like a little wrap up. So
cool guy Chris.
Yeah, cool guy Chris giving us a little cheat sheet.
Thanks. I'll have to check it out.
Thanks, Chris. Last couple of things we have here on our personal score for this book. We have the length, which we put as a 3. It's less than 300 pages. I think at least the Kindle version that I read said it was like 240, I think. And that's not including like the notes and references and things. So it's really not a long read. And with how engaging it is, it really goes fast. And then density, we put it at a 3 as well. He spaces the knowledge nuggets out with some awesome stories that help solidify the principles in your mind. So it's not overbearing. It's not like reading a textbook. It's a very good amount of density.
Yeah. In fact, I think 3 is ideal for the density score. Because if it's a 5, man, I'm sweating. Like I need to prep, I need to like put on something cozy.
Get out a pen and paper.
Get out a pad and paper. Like tell my wife I'm not going to leave the room for like 12 to 48 hours, lock the door, get ready. So I think 3 is really great. It gives you time to digest. And again, the stories are like the perfect padding. So it's like, teach this principle, show it in action, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And then go apply. So it was great. So now let's jump into the nitty gritties of what we liked and didn't like about this book. And I'll kick us off here. I think, again, we've mentioned it a couple times already, but those stories, man, are cool. They're cool stories. And not only are they interesting, but they fulfill a purpose. And I think that was the best part on my end, or the part that I liked the most from my perspective, is these stories fulfilled a very specific purpose and teaching specific principles. I'm sure this dude's got thousands of stories. I'm sure he's seen some crazy stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff he can't even talk about,
Probably,
just because he was in the freaking FBI. But he shared specific stories that were, interesting, engaging, kind of like a mystery, that wanted to make you keep reading, but also, he said, hey, you see how I applied this principle and it led to this person surviving, or us, getting this kidnapped person back, or this hostage. Anyways, really fascinating. So that was one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I literally just gonna echo that. Stories were amazing. It's what kept me going. It was the fuel for me through the book, and it makes me want to like use the tools in a way that is effective for me, if that makes sense, right? Like, I guess it wasn't even a worry I had going into the book, but I was like, dang, this is like an extreme example of negotiation. Am I really going to be able to use this in my life?
Yeah.
But I left the book feeling like 100% yes, I totally can. And it felt doable too. He didn't make these stories part of the book to like put himself on another level and say like, hey, I'm the best freaking negotiator in the world. Maybe someday you'll be as good as me. He even had some moments in there where he like screwed up, right? He's like, hey, we used this method and it didn't work. So the stories really grounded the book for me.
Yeah. My next point that I wrote down in my notes was just perfect credentials. I mean, I really don't know if you could find someone better fit to write this book. Like, yeah, he was in the FBI and he experienced those really extreme situations where it is life or death. But he also was an educator. Post FBI.
I think he still is. Like, that's what he does every day.
Yeah, his company, the Black Swan Group, literally goes and teaches negotiation on a practical level. And I loved at the very beginning, the first chapter, he establishes this ethos by telling a story of him at Harvard. And he sits down with, the students at Harvard, and they're really experienced and they're really educated, but man, they couldn't defeat a man that had been in the field, and someone who had just been through the ringer. Anyways, so he's got the balance of, he's been in those high stress, high blood pressure situations. He's also been, negotiating a job offer, and he's helped people, get promotions and things like that. So he had a really great balance there. So again, the credentials, him being in the FBI is only half of it. The other half is him being an educator.
And I think those stories from his students and partners and from his, coworkers, they were all just as valuable, right? If not more. When he tells a story about some random college person just, for a job interview or for somebody who's like getting screwed out of money, right, that they're owed, it is a different level of relatable. Because I think most people at one point or another will probably have a job interview. They'll be negotiating their salary. Many people probably will not get paid what they were promised and have to, negotiate that. In fact, that's literally happening at my work right now, like my full-time job.
Really?
We're dealing with a client that hasn't paid us. And so I'm in talks with my boss about like, hey, how can we negotiate to get it from this guy? No news yet, but
you got to get the
significant amount of money. So like, we got to, obviously step one is call the SWAT team, like call the police.
Listen, boss, I read a book. I know what to do next. We just got to call the SWAT.
Call 911.
Yeah.
They'll help us out. Chris will get on
Chris,
the phone.
Chris, help us. Well, that's so interesting. So how did that begin? Did they seriously, like, what was their response when you asked them to pay the money?
Well, without getting into too many details, basically it's kind of like a business partnership was started. Things were going well. We kind of thought they were going well. Things started to go downhill a little bit. We got a little scared that they weren't going to follow through with their payment, but we kept working on good faith, right? We were like, hey, we're going to keep doing the work that we promised. And it hasn't been a hard no yet, but it's the kind of thing where they're like past deadlines. They're not responding. They're being very vague when we ask questions about it. And so it's, it was kind of a rough end to that relationship. Because
that's sad.
It just wasn't a good fit.
Sorry to interrupt, but did you ever find out like what the reasoning was?
Well, we actually ended up ending the partnership because it wasn't a good fit. We broke up with them. We had the hard talk.
Oh my gosh.
And I know, it was very
they were
sad.
Crying. You said it's not us, it's you.
Yeah, pretty much. But it was one of those things where it wasn't worth it to our business. The stress and the turmoil that this particular client was putting our business through was not worth the money. Anyways. And so we were like, hey, just, pay us up. We'll give you what we've done up to this point, and then you can go find someone. And they were like, all right, sounds good. But so it's very similar actually to a lot of those situations in the book. So I'm a little nervous just because I'm like, oh, freak, this is like high stakes stuff for not only me but for my coworkers and my boss and stuff. And I'm not exactly the person that will be doing the negotiation there, but I hope to be able to provide some insight there. Yeah.
Well, hey, Chris talks a lot about having a team for negotiating. So
that's true.
You got to have those headphones on. You got to be tapping into their location.
I need a van. I need to buy a van, man.
You need a van, first of all.
It needs to
Before you even think about negotiating, step one, buy a white van.
It has to say like Acme Plumbing on the side or something like that.
You open the side and there's like a whole computer setup. Yeah, a whole server room.
Yeah.
I love it.
Dang. Well, we can't buy that because he hasn't paid us. So that's we're stuck in a vicious cycle.
Oh, man. One other thing that I really liked about the book was his takeaways were very applicable and repeatable. So, sometimes we read a book and the takeaway is like, just go out there and just, you got this.
Do it.
Just do it, man. Like this is going to be a huge step in your life. Good luck. And I'm like, yeah. Now what, And so I think one of the benefits of Chris is he thinks very logically, and especially regarding such an emotional and kind of an abstract subject of like human conversation, right? But he grounds it, and his takeaways are very logical, very easy to understand. It's like mirroring is simply repeating 1 to 3 words, and that alone will help you get more information. Labeling is just kind of determining what they're feeling and saying it out loud.
And he even says it, he even gives you like a framework. He's like, if you're trying to label something, just say, it seems like, fill in the blank. Like, it's that simple. And no one's going to know that it like isn't what you would normally say, because people say that, that's a completely fair thing. If I say, hey, Robert, it seems like you're just not really getting what I have to say today in our book club review. That's a completely fair thing for me to say. Right.
Yeah.
But
you don't really feel that way, right?
No, that was just an example.
No, it's so true, though. It's so true. He literally says, in quotation marks, say this phrase.
Yeah, gives you a bunch of variations. And I think that was one of my favorite parts, was those very specific lines. And, he gets down to the nitty gritty. He says, use how and what when you ask questions in negotiation. Don't ask why or who. They're just not relevant, and you can, and those are probably the questions that people ask most of the time anyway. So, I mean, I think I'm going to touch on this a little bit later in our conversation here about the why, or sorry, the how and the what questions. Yeah, but just how specific they were is awesome.
Yeah. Last thing that I had written down is finding logic in an emotional topic. I just referenced this just a little bit, but again, it is more of an abstract topic, and it's not math, it's human connection, it's human empathy. And so how do you you optimize that? How do you engage with that? And he grounds it in such a fantastic way and makes it very logical. There's one line that was so funny. He was talking about how previously the approach to negotiation was very logical, like getting to yes. You know, what's the game plan? What are the step-by-step, you know, things that we need to do to get to yes? And he says, come on, man, it's not about that. It's about emotion and not acting as if it's based on emotion is illogical. And that just cracked me up. I was like, oh my goodness. The logic is the fact that, you know, we got to recognize that emotion is the heart of negotiation. People are emotional, and that's what we need to target.
Yeah, I love that. And having just that frame of mind for what negotiation is has made me think about my conversations differently. For myself, you know, I think about how when I'm talking to someone about what I want, say a family member or something like that, I have to realize that my emotions are in play there. And that's okay. That's just part of it. But on the flip side, if I'm talking to someone and I'm taking more of the role of the negotiator, right? I'm trying to get what I want. I have to realize that their emotions are not only there, but they're valid, and that I need to acknowledge them in a way that's helpful and, you know, validating and even loving, right? That recognizing that most of the negotiations that I have aren't life and death, but that we just need to resolve it in a way that makes both parties happy. And the crazy thing about that, right, is that you can still get what you want and have that be the case.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, if we jump into insights real quick, because I have something on that whole line of thought.
Let's do it.
So just talking about our insights, our takeaways, our knowledge nuggets. The first thing that I wrote was empathy. It's like, is this book not a book about empathy?
I think it's like
really
one of
is.
The first things he says, he's like, this is about empathy.
Yeah, it's about understanding people. And that was beautiful to me. It's very human, very meaningful. The goal is get them to talk and talk and talk and talk some more and bare their soul to you so that you can use it to get what you want.
Yeah.
You know, and that sounds weird, but when you read the book, he explains that this is a win-win because, and I love the analogy that he gives of, there's a man, a husband, and he puts on some dress shoes. And his wife says, hey, you should wear these ones. These ones look way better. And they argue about it, and they're like, fine, we'll compromise. You'll wear one of each. And then he looks like a fool. It's a lose-lose, right? But if they had negotiated and listened to each other and really had empathy, and, you know, used that, you know, what if she had some sentimental value in these shoes, right? And really wanted to see him in these shoes. Then he could have worn those shoes and would have been no problem. And it would have been a win-win, right? So, anyways, I just found that was so beautiful and so exciting about negotiation. I don't like the freaking sales. Hey, we're gonna make them say yes, even though they don't want to. You know, it's like, well, wait a minute, we can get them to say yes and make them want to. You know, because they'll realize that it's good for them and good for us. So,
yeah, I love that, and I have to admit, so I really tried to implement some of this in the last couple of weeks because I'm moving, and so I sold a lot of my stuff, and I was kind of like buckling up to like negotiate and stuff like this, right? Just the exact stuff that we've been talking about. Like, I'm like, okay, I want win-wins. I want to make some money from my stuff. I want to get the price that I want, but I want these people to be happy with the price that they're getting. And I wish I could report that it all went perfectly and that I never split the difference and that I never just sold something for cheap because I just wanted it to be done. But what I can tell you is that there were times when I feel like I did it right, at least right enough to where I felt good about how it ended up, and the other person that left with my stuff, they were happy, right?
Yeah.
And even
now,
though
I don't want to. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even though they maybe, I don't know if they ended up paying more. There were some things that I didn't negotiate down on the price, but they paid quote unquote full price for what I was selling.
Sure.
But they, because of the conversation we had and the interaction and, you know, how that went, I felt like they left feeling good. So
yeah, they had no idea they got scammed. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. I freaking fooled those guys. They didn't even know I hit them.
Nice.
That table, he's gonna sit down at that table. It's just gonna crumble in 2 days. That's the way I planned it.
What a fool. So I was gonna say, when I cut you off, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, are there any examples of some interactions you had, some negotiations where you put on the FBI hat and you drilled it?
I've got a bad one for you. So
oh, here we go.
I'm still learning, but I'll tell you what, it made me motivated. I really want to practice this stuff now because I lost a couple $100. But so let me tell you about it. So I sold my car a little bit ago, and it was annoying. Like I wish I could have been on the end of it where I didn't feel the pressure to sell my car quickly, because I would have loved to delve deep into it and just spend the time and do it basically by this book, get what I wanted exactly out of it, as well as making the other party happy. But I did have a little bit of time crunch to sell this vehicle, unfortunately. But in the negotiation, so I talked with a bunch of people. 90% of the messages I got on Facebook Marketplace were, I was asking like $6,000 for my car, and they were like, "How about 3? I'll give you cash." And most of them, if I said no, or even some of them, I tried saying no in the way that the book says to say no, like a very amicable no. Hey, I don't think that price is quite going to work for me. Most of them just wouldn't respond. They're just looking for the low ball. But
they're sending hundreds of those a day.
Oh,
they're like waiting for one Dumbo to just be like, what the heck,
exactly.
$3,000. So yeah, good on you for spotting that.
Yeah. So for those, it was easy, right? Negotiation over. Just they never responded to my message. So, but for the ones where I did actually start meeting with people in person, the guy that ended up buying it, there were a few cosmetic things with my car, and like just paint was scratched, right? Like the front little plastic thing underneath the bumper was kind of hanging down a little bit. It'd never been in a wreck or anything, but he was very concerned about that. And then the driver's side door is a little bit jank. It didn't happen while I had it, but I think the previous owner must have like backed it into a pole while it was open or something, because it just like wasn't quite close to where you want it, right? So
you tied it down on the freeway, with a strap.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not quite. It really is. It's a non-problem. Like I fixed the door to a certain degree, but it's not perfect. Sure. Anyway, long story to say, we got into the price negotiation of this after the guy I sold it to had been doing like a walk around for forever, and he's really thinking about it and all this stuff. And we had set a price. I was like, okay, I'll sell it to you for 55, which is actually what I wanted out of it. 6 was high, and so I did that intentionally. I wanted 55 out of it, and but I presented that as a sort of discount almost. And when we got talking to it, he was like really humming and hawing about this stupid door, and I was just like, "Hey man, I understand." And so I ended up giving him an extra $100 off. I was like, "If you can, do it right now, like we'll get, that price works for me." Which was less than my plan. It really was. So I'm admitting here that I split the difference, okay? I did. I split the difference.
You wore 2 different shoes that day.
I did wear 2 different shoes. Come to find out, so he paid and everything, and he paid in cash. But afterwards, I was kind of mulling through that experience in my brain, and I realized, like, this guy probably had $6,000 cash, right? Like, he probably had that in his car. And if he had that, he probably was intending to buy regardless. And so he simply just wore me down. Right? I was trying to be nice. He was a really nice guy, honestly, too. Like, I wasn't trying to scam him. He wasn't trying to scam me. He wanted a lower price. I wanted the car gone. And so it worked out. I'm not overly hurt about the situation, but in hindsight, I actually think if I had said no, if I had said, "Hey, no, this is my price, like this is why," or if I had said, "Hey, sorry, 53 isn't going to work for me," or I think he offered 5. So I think I did say no once and it worked.
Sure.
But then the next time I probably could have said it again and it probably would have been okay. I don't know that for a fact, but that's kind of the gut feeling I have, is that I probably could have got that extra $100 out of it. So there's my story. I'm learning.
Hey, you know what? If that's how you learn it, that's a lot better than a kidnapper, you know. And and honestly, you did good. You did good. It's just two honest men, two honest, hardworking men, just trying to get and sell a car. So
exactly,
that's a good experience.
In the
I love
parking
it.
lot of a Krispy Kreme's, you know.
Did you get donuts?
I did not. I was so ready to go home after it. I was like,
with your new cash, you didn't grab a couple.
I'll tell you what,
couple of O's.
I'm a little anxious holding $5,000 in cash. I know for some people that may not be much, but that's a lot of cash.
It is. You didn't walk in and put it all on the table and ask for a dozen. Make it
hey, can I get this in ones so I can carry it out in a briefcase or 3?
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. One thing that was really fascinating to me that he shared was about active listening, and one of the reasons that is so important. And he said that when you truly listen to someone, they're gonna feel listened to, right?
Yeah.
And you show it with your body language and with your questions and your mirroring and things like that. And when they feel listened to, they start listening to themselves, right?
Yeah.
And they start checking their logic more, because they're like, wait a minute, if they're truly listening, I can't sound like an idiot here.
Yeah.
And so they're really careful, and they start to reveal more. And it just was so fascinating how sometimes they'll come to their own conclusion that they've been wrong simply because they feel listened to.
Yeah.
Right. It just showed the power of listening. It was really, really amazing.
And that combined with, I think what he called, was it like calculated questions or something like that?
Yes.
You remember that, where he was talking about, like, you can say a very specific type of question to get people to realize your point.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I gave myself a little bit of a pat on the back, because I have done that before. I was like, oh, I know what he's talking about there. That's something that I guess I just intuitively kind of figured out at work, especially because I do a lot of negotiation at work, and it's good. There's definitely people at work that we have differing opinions about projects and things like that. I'm a web designer and web developer, right? So it's a creative thing. Sometimes people have differing opinions, and I like to think that I know what I'm talking about a lot of the time, and I like to have my opinion be heard. But when I read that in the book, I was like, holy crap, I did that just the other day. I remember specifically asking a how question to one of my coworkers, and this was in the context of a project for a client. I said, how do you expect the client to be able to accomplish this task under your design, basically? And it was a simple question. I wasn't trying to call them out or make them feel stupid or anything like that. I saw a problem, and we were negotiating for a while, trying to resolve, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this for the client? And all I had to say was, okay, let's talk about it. How is your design going to accomplish this for the client? And the moment I said that, it broke down in their minds, which in this case ended up being a good thing, because I really do believe that we ended up making a better design for the client.
Yeah.
And they weren't heard about it. They were like, oh, okay, yeah, I really didn't consider that. I did not think about that. And so the negotiation was won simply because of a very calculated question that made them convince themselves of what I had to say.
Absolutely. That is so awesome. I love that. That reminds me of when I was working at that startup, that digital marketing startup.
Yeah.
And you know startup life, and you know how many hats you wear, and they start falling over, and some are too big and some are too small, and and you're doing a little bit of everything. And so the CEO had been asking me to do more and more and more. And I had been reading the book Essentialism by Greg, I think his name's McKeown or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And it was talking about how, like, you're supposed to only do one thing really well, focus and do the things that are essential. Yeah, specialize. And so I was like sweating. I was like, man, I'm doing a little bit of everything, and it's wearing me out. So one day he came into my office and asked me, like, okay, there's this new project I want you on, and you're going to be great at it, and here's what I want you to do. I listened, and then I was like, okay, let's figure this out real quick. And I went to the whiteboard, and I literally started writing out my responsibilities. I was like, okay, you want me to do the billing? You want me to do some HR? You want me to do like office management, blah, 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 blah. I'm like running out of space, got to write smaller.
12
and then,
hours
so I was like,
later.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, how would you like me to do that then? How am I supposed to do that? And it was nice. I wasn't doing it in a condescending manner. And he's like, you know what? I don't want you to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And in fact, he started delegating some of the things that I had been assigned to other people. So it was great. The calculated questions are amazing. They work so well. So
yeah. I'm curious if you had any thoughts about the length of negotiation after reading this book, because the reason I ask is because I realize that negotiations are often very rapid in day to day. The negotiations that he talks about in his stories are really long sometimes, like days, weeks even. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, do you feel like that's valid, or maybe I'm just like killing it? Maybe I'm just doing so good they end so quick. But what do you think?
No, I am 100% with you. And your story of the car thing I related to so much, because I'm the kind of guy where it's like, after about 10 minutes, I'm uncomfortable. I'll give you money to take my car.
Exactly.
And so I end quick. But I think what he was trying to convey is, even though it's uncomfortable, be slow. Take your time, you know? I think that's something I'm trying to learn through this book is take your time. And when there's that silence and it's uncomfortable, just sit there. Just sit there and sit in it and think slowly and process, and don't worry about it. Because another thing that I worry about is he talks so much about listening close and catching details. And I'm like, man, I don't do that, because the moment they're done speaking, I'm in there. Yeah. And when I'm done speaking, they're in there, and back and forth and back and forth. And I'm like, I'm missing stuff. And so I don't know. I think maybe a compromise there is, when it's a fast-paced environment, try to slow it down. Try to pull the brakes. At least that's what I'm trying to work on, because I'm right there with you. It definitely was a concern of mine. Like, I think that story that we shared on our social media about the wanted fugitives who were stuck in the apartment, that lasted 8 hours. And then they finally came out peacefully. And I'm like, geez, I don't have 8 hours to negotiate a raise. They'll kick me out. they'll shoot me before they give me a raise after 8 hours. So I think maybe just finding that ability to slow down the conversation yourself. And
totally. I think that's awesome. It's really like a game of patience, and you have to like almost force that patience in there. Sometimes. I one of the things that I'm really excited to try, I'm also very nervous to try, is to like, the next time I have an opportunity to like negotiate something asynchronously, either via text or email or something like that, I really want to try and say, no, like, let me take you out to lunch, or let me take you out to dinner, and let's hash it out, like face to face. That's terrifying in some ways. Like, depending on the person and depending on the situation, maybe not. But if it's like a random person that I am trying to get to do what I want, that's really, really scary. And but I'm like, it's exhilarating. I'm like really excited to try it, because I loved his point about how some of these negotiations that he's participated in wouldn't have been possible if they were done over email. It just wouldn't have worked. You don't get the same thing. It's like, what is the rule? 7/22/53 or something like that? No, that doesn't add up to 100. You know what I'm talking about in the book?
Yeah.
It's like 7%.
I don't remember the numbers either.
Yeah, there's some random numbers in there, and I promise they add up to 100. But it's like, the smallest one is the words you say. The next biggest one is like your tone of voice, I think, and then the next one was your body language. And you miss out on all of that when you're texting or emailing. So I think that slows it down too, right? If you're like, hey, let's meet. It gives you time to prepare. It gives you time to think. It gives you time to fill out the sheet in the back of the book and say, hey, I got some labels. It seems like you really want to sell this house and you want to sell it quick. Or it seems like you're looking to find the right kind of buyer for your vehicle. You want someone that's going to love it. Or I don't know.
Absolutely.
Right? All these things.
So I love this point that you've made, and I'm going to pull out a crazy reference that talks about this. But have you read The Way of Kings or the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson?
Not yet, man. It's on my list. But I love Brandon Sanderson.
there's this wonderful part, and I think it's the third book, where this king who was formerly like a warlord, like a soldier who just like dominated, and they went and captured land through, you know, violence and things like that. But he changes and he becomes a king, and he's trying to protect the world from an oncoming threat, basically. I don't want to spoil anything. So he's using these, it's called a fabrial. Anyways, long story short, they can communicate long distances through like written letters. Like back and forth communication, almost like texting, but it's written. And he's like talking to these other kings and queens, trying to get them to come together and help him. And they're all just very unresponsive, not interested. Finally, he finds a way to talk to one of them face to face, and come to find out they all thought that he wanted to take them over again, right? And so they were like, dude, we didn't know that you wanted to, you know, be nice and like to protect us. We thought you wanted to take us over and capture our land again. Like, that's what you said in the email. And he's like, no, I just wanted to come like protect you, you know? He's like asking to send soldiers to their kingdom. Anyways, long story short, it just was so fascinating reading this book, and you're so right that there's a huge division between personal connection, personal conversation, and anything that's online or written, or you're, you know, doing Morse code or sending a pigeon with a letter attached. Like it's all very different. So it's a good takeaway.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean,
you're just like Dalinar is what I'm trying to say.
I'm just like him. I feel it.
You're just like that warlord turned peaceful king.
I often think of myself as a warlord turned peaceful king, so I see the resemblance there. No, but well, I just have one last thing on my notes here. Can I talk about it real quick?
Absolutely.
It's callback to the how and the what questions, because this is something that I've seen in my relationship with my wife a little bit. Because I mean, as with any type of relationship, you will run into negotiations about lots of things. And very early on, I really tried to stop asking why and start asking how and what. And then to try and get, I didn't know that I was trying to do this, but I was always trying to get to somewhere where she could say, that's right, rather than I'll try. Because I'll try, as he said in the book, is basically no. It's anytime you hear that, your heart should sink a little bit, because they haven't convinced themselves of whatever you're saying yet, or that, you know, they haven't bought in to the message. They don't want to do it yet. But when someone says that's right in response to a statement that you say, that's it. That's almost like the golden ticket. You're in. Right, you can proceed from there, knowing that mentally and emotionally they have aligned with the offer, with the topic of the negotiation. But I really thought also back not only to my relationship with my wife, but to my relationship with like my parents. How I could totally remember thousands of conversations and lectures where the word why was being thrown around like willy-nilly.
Ooh, yeah.
Both sides of the fight, I'm sure. You know, why won't you let me do what I want me to do, or what I want to do, or why the frick did you do something so dumb, or insert any number of why questions. But they always make the other party feel like crap. And once you do that, you've basically closed off their mind to accepting any sort of negotiation. If you start throwing blame or you know, making somebody think that you immediately know better than them and that it's your way or the highway, it's so hard to recover that. So that's what I would say is, that's like my number one focus right now, is like, quit saying why. Who cares why? Like, how are we going to accomplish this? What do we need to do to come to an agreement here? Like, how can I help make this a wonderful agreement and partnership in whatever thing we're negotiating? It's more of a conversation and less of a pointing fingers competition. Right.
Yeah. Conversation over allegation.
Yep.
Yeah. I thank you so much, dude. That is a beautiful takeaway. And I seriously feel like that is why everyone needs to read this book. It's not about the raises. You know, that's nice. It's not about, you know, getting an extra couple $100 on your car. It's not about the promotion. It's about these relationships that we're building with our loved ones, and we're strengthening them by being better listeners, by developing empathy, understanding them better. I mean, the simple step of labeling their emotions, it requires you to understand their emotions first, or at least to try to understand them, right?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people fall off, right? Is they don't even try. So just try.
Exactly.
I think you're exactly right.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it changes your brain when you're negotiating with someone. So instead of you're saying, I'm right, you're saying, what am I missing? How are you right? You know, and what makes you feel like you're right? And that's so wonderful. How have you been implementing this recently? How has it been changing that relationship with your loved ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been good. Like I said, I specifically have been focusing on the how and what questions.
Yeah.
I need to do more of the labeling, saying like, hey, it seems like I'm not understanding this, or it seems like you're feeling this, or I think that's such a good way to approach things. I honestly think that if people would approach their problems when they were confronting someone about something, because that happens all the time in relationships, right? Like somebody does something that you don't like. That happens. And rather than going, hey, why do you do that? Like, what is wrong with you? Saying, hey, it seems like you do this because of this. That's so, I don't know if innocuous is the word I'm looking for, because some people may, take some offense to that. But in general, it's a way softer ball than hitting them with the why.
Yeah.
And it really does make them feel heard, and you have to have empathy to say that. You can't say it seems like this is like this because of this without having taken into consideration the other half of the equation.
So, absolutely. What you've started talking about has just grounded this whole episode, dude. I really think that this conversation you just started is the reason for the season, man.
Reason for the season.
It's the reason for this whole month being about negotiation. It's like, it's cool to learn FBI negotiation tactics, but how does that make us better husbands and better wives and better sons and daughters and better friends, And I'm going to throw out another crazy reference here. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm buckled in.
Inside Out. The movie.
Oh,
right?
Dude, you can't bring up Inside Out. That's like the movie I cry at all the time,
man. I sobbed like a baby, man.
There's not many, I swear, but it's that one gets me.
Yeah. I'm not a crier, but you show me that scene where sadness is talking to that imaginary friend, and I'll bawl like a baby, man.
Dude, I have the soundtrack on my study playlist or on my work playlist. I don't know why I do that to myself, man.
You're
Every
crying
time
while you're coding. Oh, dude, it's so good. And here was the beautiful part of that specific moment that I just referenced is there's this imaginary friend and joy and sadness. The whole movie Joy's been stifling sadness, saying, you don't really belong. You don't help. We shouldn't acknowledge you, right? Let's just be joyful. And if there's a tough situation, let's think about the positive, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this friend of theirs, this imaginary friend, loses something that was priceless to him. It was his little rocket ship thing, his little wagon. And he's so distraught, and they need him to progress. And so Joy is saying, let's go. Why are you sitting there so sad? We need to go. Why, right? Like, why can't we just go right now? Think about the positive. And then lumbers along sadness, and she sits by him, and she just cries with him and says, that sounds awful. And I understand what you're saying. And she literally says, that must have been hard.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, it was. It was hard to lose this thing that meant so much to me. And all of a sudden, he's feeling understood. And he can trust sadness more, and he comes to a conclusion about his sadness. If he had pushed sadness away, he wouldn't have been able to progress, right? But he was able to acknowledge it because he was listened to, because she mirrored him. She labeled his emotion. It literally showed. I was watching it and was like, Chris Voss, you did it again. You did something with this movie, man. Like every step of the way, Sadness negotiated with him in a way that motivated him to say, all right, I'm ready to go, without saying, why are you not going, right?
Yeah.
So
what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
Well, I love that, dude. That is a great note to end our conversation, I think, on why, or I almost said why we sleep. Oh, man. It's been
more sleep.
We do. I'm tired. No, on Never Split the Difference by our man Chris Voss, and Tal Raz is the co-writer there. So
that's right.
I think it is time now, right? It's time to announce the next book. First of all, say thank you to all of you who have listened to this, as well as to those who have watched our videos and participated in the Discord. We're having a lot of fun with it. We love reading the book. We have some exciting stuff planned in terms of podcasts and videos and things, and hope that they continue to provide some value to you. But yeah, let's talk about the next book. Do you wanna say it?
Yeah, real quick. Are you okay if we give the final recommendation?
Oh yeah, we probably should do that. I'm getting ahead of myself, man.
I'll give it a one-liner. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Here's the recommendation: read/listen to it ASAP. That's it. That's the recommendation. That's our scale. It's like, I can't remember. Is it like not a read, add it to your list, or read it ASAP? I think that's
the one.
Well, it's up there for read it ASAP. So
we're 2 for 2.
And then you need to read the next book that we're going to read, which is actually read that one first with us. Read it first with us, then go back and read this one if you haven't read it already.
Yeah. I mean, I think both of these are going to be quick reads, right?
Yeah.
This one we know was pretty quick, but I'm pretty sure this next one is not very long. So
yeah, it's not very long. And the book is called Thirst, A Story of Redemption, Compassion, and a Mission to Bring Clean Water to the World. It's by Scott Harrison. And basically Scott was I think he was like a club promoter.
Yeah.
And he was rich. Yeah. He was rich, and he had his life together, in air quotes, for those who are listening. It's, he, kind of had everything he wanted, but he found out that he was incredibly unsatisfied and not happy at all. So he just moved to Africa just on a whim, and decided to start there, and ends up developing a charity for clean water, finding that they really struggle to have clean water there. The charity is still running to this day. I think it's called Charity : Water.
It's Project Water.
Is it Project Water?
Maybe. It's one of the two.
It's one of the two. Just go look at the book and you'll see it right on there.
We haven't read it yet, okay?
yeah, we haven't read that. Here's the great thing as well, is all the proceeds of the book go straight to the charity. So if you want to donate to charity and also read about change and finding purpose in life and being happy and satisfied, then this is a great opportunity. It's also, from what we've read, just an incredibly engaging story. It might pull at the heartstrings a little bit, kind of shows the struggles of starting something like this. And it also talks about how one man can make such a huge difference in millions of people's lives. I mean, this is one guy who decided, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to make something of myself. And all of a sudden, he's changed millions of lives. So we are super excited to read or listen to this book. Yeah. And we hope you guys will join us. It's going to be a blast.
I'm personally excited for this because we're kind of flipping the script a little bit. Both books that we've read in Cardinal Corner have been, you could categorize them under self-help or self-improvement, I'd say. This one is not that, right? It is more of a story. It's more of an experience that you'll get to watch, or not watch, I guess read, but you'll get a
watch in your mind's eye
and imagine what really happened. But we really wanted to read a story about a person, and so it'll be a little bit different, but I'm super stoked. I can't wait to start reading it. And I'm going on a trip where we're going to have lots of time to read, so I'm probably going to finish this book real fast, but I am so excited.
Absolutely.
So,
well, hey, Chase, thanks for chatting with me, and thanks for everyone who's listening. We love you. We really love you, and we appreciate you participating in our little corner here, and participating in self-improvement and growing and learning, continually learning. We're excited for the future.
Yep, we will see y'all later. Talk to y'all later. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.